We'll go through the case. It'll probably take about 30, maybe 35 minutes. And then we'll have about 10 minutes at the end for very structured feedback for the different components of your case. And then I think we'll open the floor up to some Q&A for everyone to ask about what they kind of observed. But let me know when you're ready to go, and we can jump in.
Good to go.
Okay. All right. So our client today is NutriCorp. NutriCorp is a $5 billion nutrition foods company based in France. Now, the company has had a very strong presence in the EU or in Europe, and in particular has had excellent market share in France, where it started, Germany, and Spain. Now, NutriCorp has two distinct product lines that they sell. First one is premium infant products. So this includes things like milk and solid foods. So think of like baby foods, but solidified versions for infants up to 2 years old. And all of these products are sold through the retail channel. So think like brick and mortar, like retailers, retail stores. The second channel, or the second product line, is the medical nutrition supplements product. So these are designed for patients in 3 different segments: HIV patients, cancer patients, and diabetes patients. You can assume this is both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So these are basically pills or powders that help maintain or restore health as it pertains to these 3 different ailments. The volume of the supplements depends on the segment itself. So for example, a diabetes patient takes 2 daily supplements, whereas an HIV patient only has to take 1. These, contrary to the first product line, are sold through the direct sales channel. So you can think of this as like boots on the ground sales reps type thing. So the CEO feels that the growth potential for this company has maxed out in Europe, and they want to explore growth in the US market. So they want your help to kind of approach this problem and figure out what they should do. And I will give you a quick sec to kind of collect your thoughts.
Great, thank you. Awesome. Well, I think that's all really great information. This seems like a really exciting market to jump into. I'm not entirely familiar with the space here, but really eager to learn about it as we go through here. Before we get started, I'd love to recap the breadth of information we had here, just to make sure all the points are in order before we jump into getting to the bottom of this US expansion.
Sure.
So just to reiterate, we're working here for NutriCorp, a very large food company within France. They predominantly operate in the EU with success in France, Germany, and Spain, and they operate in 2 segments. The first one being in infant food products, and the second one, a little bit more complicated, is the medical nutritional supplements directly for patients with HIV, diabetes, and other conditions. This one's a little bit more nuanced with different doses for different conditions, as well as a bit of a differentiated sales channel. All of that information is super helpful, and they've asked us to explore growth in the United States, as they feel they've really, tapped out the EU market and reached their potential for market share. Before we really jump into assessing this opportunity in the United States, I'd love to ask a few questions to clarify some things before we get to the bottom of this.
Sure.
So I guess for this entry in, okay. Great.
That's the client in the other room solving another part of the case.
glad everyone's on board here. Awesome. Well, for this expansion into the United States, I'd love to know if there's a particular goal here that they're trying to achieve, maybe in terms of market share capture on a global level, profitability levels. Wondering if you had any information on that.
Yes, great question. We are pretty new to this, so we don't have pretty new to this particular case. So we don't have a specific metric in mind, like a return on investment, break even, or payback period, anything like that. However, revenue potential, profitability, those are the standard things you might think about here as being key, or the foundations of the examples you gave. Those are important areas.
Sure. Totally makes sense. I know we said we're in France, but we also have a presence in Germany and Spain. Do we have any relevant experience in this type of market expansion prior to considering this US option?
Yeah, so we started in France, then we expanded within the EU. Now we're pretty large, so I would say that that was successful. So we have experience within the EU expanding, but no cross-continent expansion experience. So this would be our first trip to the other side of the globe, I guess.
Okay, yeah, I think that totally makes sense. And just considering, a final little bit of information here. Do we have any maybe prior diligence on the United States market and the receptiveness to these two demographics within the infant foods and as well as the HIV, diabetes, and cancer patients?
Good question. We can get into some of the more specific, like market dynamics later on. Nothing upfront that we need to look at just as of now.
Okay, that totally makes sense. I think there's a lot of great information here. I'd love to take a minute or two to really frame up my thoughts as we kind of dive into the problem here.
Yep. So as you do that, just frame your thoughts around the different areas or considerations that the client should keep in mind as they think about whether or not they should enter the U.S. market.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Great. I'd love to kind of walk you through what I was able to come up with for a structure. So when considering the major things we would want to look into when diving into or considering this US market expansion, there are really four categories that I would like to take a deeper dive into. So starting off here, I think primarily I would want to look at the market within the United States. And there's a couple different areas that I think would be important for us to touch on. Starting first with the market size, I think it's really important to gain an understanding for what the total addressable market would be here in the US, potentially broken down by the different types of products that we're selling, being the infant food as well as the medical nutrition. Furthermore, within that total market size, I would like to understand, how this population that we cater to has been growing or shrinking over the years. Is this a market that's expanding and might create, a position for us to successfully enter with some ease? And lastly, within the market, I think it'd be really important to consider the competitive landscape here. I know I've personally seen some products on the shelves here that cater to similar demographics that our company NutriCorp may be looking into. So understanding if it's a very consolidated market that might be harder to break into, or maybe fragmented, to understand some of the barriers we might face upon a market entry. In terms of the second bucket, I really want to look at the customer within the United States. And there's a couple things here that I think more specifically we could get to the bottom of. The first one is the need that we have here. Are we seeing more customers with diabetes or more customers with cancer? That might be a larger market for our client to tap into. as well as maybe more mothers that are looking to use these products. What are the popularity of this avenue of nutrition for clients in the United States? Um, Also, maybe considering the different use cases, looking at the core customers that we're catering to, and how many of them are using our product. Do we have any alternatives that customers are using? Really considering this before we tailor out potentially a marketing strategy or an access strategy. And the final one that I want to look at here is really, what do customers within the United States value? So potentially putting out an initial survey to get some of these results back, but people in the EU might be a little bit more price focused, while people in the United States might be a little bit more quality focused. Understanding what those differences may be to really get to the bottom of our product offering and how we can most successfully go into the US. The third bucket I want to look into is the financial considerations associated with this market entry. There's a few things here that I think would be important to know. The first one is a lot of the upfront cost of this entry into the United States, understanding what it would take for us, how it might affect our own balance sheet, and if we have cash available to expand here. The second one is, considering the, expansion of, the costs, looking at the United States, what it would look for us to operationally make this happen. I know we're within the EU, so a bit different shipping from Germany to France than it is from France all the way over to the United States. And finally, just the variable costs that would be associated with producing a much larger amount of product. Would we have to really look at opening more facilities? Do we have the capabilities here? What would that look like for us to afford? I guess the last bucket that I wanted to look into here were just a few hurdles that we would definitely want to look into. So quick points here, considering that the US has a different governance system. How would we comply with the FDA, the regulations there? Also understanding the government regulations that we might face here in recent years, knowing that tariffs or other geopolitical concerns could really affect the intercontinental supply chains, making this whole process harder for us. So would love to address those. But all that being said, I think getting a better understanding for the United States market could be a great place to start here, really looking into what the opportunity is within this new expansion.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, a lot of great areas there. I think they're all important, but I agree. Looking at the market first is a great place to start, and the client happens to agree with us as well. So that's where they want to start. So we're going to get specific for a second and zoom in just on that second product line, the medical nutrition food supplements, and specifically within there, we're going to first look at the diabetes segment. Okay, so this supplement for diabetes patients is designed to offer, the benefit you might imagine, which is just to control blood sugar levels for these individuals. And the client wants us to size this market. So some information I can give you to help with that is, as I mentioned earlier, patients take 2 of these supplements per day. They cost $1.50 per supplement. I can tell you that 5% of the US population has diabetes. And that's, again, both, you can assume just type 1, type 2, looking at both. And 90% of those people are actually good about taking their medication. And for the sake of this, you can assume that the population of the US is 300 million. So knowing that, please go ahead and size the market.
Great. Awesome. So I think there's a lot of great information here. Before I jump into it, really want to think about this at a super high level before we maybe get down into the weeds of the numbers here. I think we could start here with that last figure of population, then find the amount of people who would be utilizing this product on a consistent basis, and then multiply by the amount they would be taking per day, and then we would multiply by the cost to find the total market on a yearly basis. Does that sound good?
Sounds good to me.
Great. So starting with getting to the bottom of how many people our product would be serving. I know we start with 300 million. I'd like to first multiply that by the 5% of people that have diabetes in the United States. So taking 5% of 300 million, we're going to find that 15 million people have diabetes in the United States. Moving on from there, we know that 90% of the people are good about taking these meds. So I'd like to, take 90% of that 15 million to get the people who really are going to be participating within this market. So quick math here. I know 10% of 15 million is going to give us 1.5 million. So if you were to just subtract that 1.5 million from the 15 million, we would get 13.5 million. So this is going to be the total amount of people participating in the market for these goods. What I'd like to do here is multiply this by 2 to represent the amount of pills that people are taking per day. So if we were to go and multiply 13.5 million by 2, we're going to get 27.5 million pills that are being taken on an annual basis. Or sorry, 27 million pills that are being taken on an annual basis. And then we have a cost of $1.50 per supplement. So multiplying 27 million times 1.5, we know half of this is 13.5 million. So we can add that 13.5 million to the 27 million. And this is going to get us to 40.5 million for the total market here on an annual basis for these diabetes pills. Thinking about this number, it might seem a little bit low at first for such a large market. However, it is a little bit niche with these pills. So I'd love to maybe hear your thoughts on where we're at here.
So the 40.5 million over what time frame is that?
That's going to be that's actually, when I think about it, that's going to be on a daily basis because we multiplied by the 2 pills per day. So what we could do here is multiply by 365 in order to get the yearly market here. Does that sound good?
Yep, sounds good.
Great. So would it be safe to assume 40 million in this case?
Sure, you can use 40 and you can round 365 to 360.
Great. Awesome. So we have 40 million times 360 days. So 3, I'm going to separate out the 4 and then the 10 million. So first multiplying the 360 by 4, that's going to give us it's going to give us 2,640. And then if we were to multiply that by 10 million, we would get 26,400,000,000 on an annual basis for the overall market for the diabetes customers.
Maybe just double check that math one more time.
Okay. So
you got it right. You got the 40 times 360. Just double check the math.
So thinking about a zeros problem on this a little bit. So 360 times 4 is going to give us 2,640. And then if we multiply...
that specific one I would check.
Okay, great. I think a little bit easier here for me. 360 times 2 is going to give us 720. 720 times 2 is going to give us 1440. So
there you go.
1440, if you add on the 10 million there, $14,400,000,000. How does that sound?
Yep, close enough. I let you round, but if you had used the full 365 days, yeah, it would have been 14.8. So you can assume that.
14.8 billion.
Yeah.
Great. Just thinking about this number, really exciting stuff here, as there's a massive market that we could potentially take advantage of here in the United States. So I would be really interested to maybe consider what percentage of the market share we could look to capture upon an entry.
Okay. Good insight there. Definitely a large market, almost 3x the total size of NutriCorp. So looks promising. I want to talk a little bit about the competitors
Sure.
before getting into anything else, and still within the diabetic segment. So the client is particularly interested about what competitive response might look like. So we'd be a new entrant to the U.S. market, and when we enter, assuming that we do, the client wants your thoughts on what you think competitors would do to react to us entering the market.
Great. Is it okay if I take a few seconds to just structure out my thoughts here?
Of course, yeah.
Great. So when I consider, this new market and the competitors that we might be looking into, there's kind of two things that I would want to look into. The first is being, the pricing of the market and some of the dynamics there. And the second would be kind of their distribution and marketing tactics as they go into, or as they see the threat of a new entrant. First with the price changes, I think this could be something to heavily consider. Somewhat dependent on the breakdown of the market, whether there's big players or not, but you could see potentially undercutting of the prices, trying to squeeze us out as a new entrant could be a major threat that we would need to consider. Especially if maybe they have manufacturing within the United States or it's a little bit cheaper, they might have more of an ability to charge a lower cost than us and retain some customers while maybe we're posing that threat. Now, the second one is their sales channels and marketing initiatives. Like we said at the start of the case, it's a really interesting model here where it's a lot of sales reps selling these products, which is an interesting channel. So maybe there's interesting dynamics with how they contract out to healthcare providers or doctors' offices, whoever's distributing these products. And they could look to lock down maybe longer term contracts or types of agreements in which it would make it a lot more difficult for us to find traction within this market and get our products out to people through the current sales channels that we're operating within.
Okay. Good ideas. What else might you think of?
Yeah, totally. So we talked about price changes. We talked about, marketing initiatives. When I consider who they're catering to with, the diabetes market in particular here, just in terms of maybe like some of the marketing tactics that they're going through, I know that diabetes is particularly difficult to deal with. The prices of insulin are very high, so maybe offering some sort of promotions or people like some sort of offerings that might entice people to buy their products more. I kind of just thinking through some of the more nuanced tactics of the marketing here, maybe changing the types of customers that they're catering to, employing some sympathy with the market, trying to position as maybe the competitor to insulin, how their products could help manage blood sugar as well. Really just considering that customer messaging in a market where people are struggling so much could be an interesting lens. Maybe on top of that, looking at more localized partnerships that they could leverage within the United States. So if there are larger firms or larger companies that are producing these goods, maybe looking to team up with the American Diabetes Association as, say, like the lead provider of these foods, or some of these the larger healthcare advocacy groups as leading partnerships within the market could help them become the name brand and really squeeze out NutriCorp in terms of this market entry.
Cool. Okay. All right. Good idea. Okay. We're going to put the second product line on pause for now. I'm going to shift gears a little bit
Sure.
to the first one. So the infant products. So as I mentioned, these are sold through the retail sales channel. So again, brick and mortar, like retail shops. And NutriCorp is evaluating 3 different types of retail stores that they're considering launching this product in the US. I have an exhibit that I'm going to pull up. So let me get that up for you. And
Sure.
would love to get your thoughts on what you think as you're looking through this.
Great. Awesome. So like you said, we have 3 different options here with mass retailers, specialty shops, and mom and pop shops. The information we have here is number of stores in the US, total revenue in billions, and the share of infant nutrition market.
Mhm.
So, some numbers that stand out to me immediately are really the smaller mom and pop shops with 500 stores. However, if you look down, the total revenue is going to be a lot lower than these other two options, being mass retailers and specialty shops. Also, looking at the market share, mass retailers and specialty shops are taking up a lot more of the market here. So, when I consider looking at these options, we have the full market at hand here, and we have the total revenue. So, considering the options that we might want to go forward with, it would be interesting to look at, maybe what we would be able to take away from these markets, how easy it would be for us to enter into these different retail channels. But immediately, what sticks out to me is the mass retailers, with the $10.5 billion market being the largest opportunity. But then again, might be some more dynamics that we'd want to look into when it comes to forming relationships with these stores.
Okay. I agree. I think that's a good assessment there. Okay. I'm going to pull this down and going to switch gears one more time on you. Sorry,
Sure.
back and forth between the product lines. Client's very curious. So
Course.
again, back to the medical nutrition products. I want to look at a different segment now and talk about the cancer patients. So again, these patients are also part of our customer base, and they need nutrition supplementation as they undergo chemotherapy treatments. So client wants to know how many cancer patients we would need to attract in the US in order to break even. So what I can tell you to kind of help you out here is I mentioned that these cancer patients are sold through or attracted through the direct sales channel. So might be helpful to know that we have 50 sales representatives for medical nutrition, all of which would be dedicated to cancer patients. We're planning on allocating $10 million a year to public relations for this segment. And our direct costs are 80% of what our revenue will be. You can assume that cancer patients, like diabetes patients, take 2 doses per day, but they only take them for 5 months out of the year. So imagine you start January 1st, twice a day, and then once the 5 months is up, they stop. They don't take doses anymore. Sales rep salaries are $100,000 per year, plus they get another $100,000 in benefits, and 1 dose costs $1. So again, knowing all of this, question from the client is, how many cancer patients would we need to attract in order for our product to break even?
Awesome. Sounds good. So just to clarify some of the information here, we've got 50 sales reps, 10 million a year in public relations, 80% of our costs, or 80% of our revenue is costs. People are taking 2 doses a day, similar. However, we're only working with 5 months a year here for the cancer patients. And then for those sales reps, they're getting 100,000 in salary, as well as 100,000 in benefits. Awesome. So I think there's some great information here. What I would like to do is kind of come up with what our annual fixed cost is there, and then find what the gross margin is on one of these cancer patients. And then we could divide those two figures into one another to figure out how many cancer patients would we need to break even on this per year. So in terms of the costs that we're incurring on a yearly basis, the main ones that stick out to me are, first, the 10 million in public relations. And then we also have these 50 sales reps that are going to make up a large amount of these overhead costs that we're looking to break even on. So we have 50 sales reps, and in terms of our costs with them, they each have a total of $200,000 a year in terms of cost for us. So multiplying 50 by 200,000 is going to give us 10 million. So that's going to be an additional 10 million for our sales reps. So looking at the information here, we're going to be looking to pay off 20 million in overhead with the margin on these cancer treatment, or not cancer treatments, but on the goods that we're selling to cancer patients. So 20 million is a figure that we're looking to pay off. Now switching gears towards what we're making on a per drug basis. We know that we want to find the profit that we're making on a singular cancer patient and then divide that into the 20 million. So we know that these cancer patients are taking 2 doses a day for 5 months out of the year. So when we think about that, we have in a number of how many pills are they taking in total on the year, and then we can multiply that by our margin. We have 2 doses times 5 months. If we estimate 30 days in a month, we've got 150 days that they're taking our medication on the year. So 2 times 150 is going to give us 300 pills per cancer patient per year, or 300 doses, I should say, per year. And then figuring out what the margin is on these pills. So we know that, you said, I think at the end there, just to clarify, the cost per pill was $1.
Yep.
And we also know that 80%. We know that 80% of our revenue is, our costs are 80% of our revenue. So in this case, if we know that $1 makes up 80% of our revenue, we could divide by 0.8 to get to what our total revenue is, and then look at what the margins are there with a little bit of subtraction.
I'll help you out.
Sure.
I think you're on the right track, but I'll help you out. So what would our revenue per year per patient be? If you know
revenue per year per patient.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, is that $1 the revenue per pill here?
Yep. So
Okay.
just the $1 by the 300.
Great. Good clarification. That I thought the $1 was the cost, but if that's revenue, I think this gets us back on.
Yeah. Sorry. Price of the pill.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So knowing that now.
Great. Yep.
What would if you know the revenue is 300 per person, what would the profit be per person?
Sure. So revenue is 300 per person. In order to find the profit, we would want to take 20% of that 300. So 10% of 300 is going to be 30, multiplied by that 2. Our profit is going to be $60 per patient per year.
Okay.
So now that we have that profit and we're looking for numbers of patients as our end goal here, we would want to divide the 20 million by $60, or the $20 million by $60. When I think 20 divided by, so if we take the million out, 20 divided by 60 is going to give us 1/3, which is 0.33333. And if we multiplied that by the million from the 20 million, we would get 3.33 million patients if you round that a little bit. So in order to break even on our costs for the cancer product line, we would need to attract 3.3 million patients per year.
I think you missed a 0 there, but I'll let you know it's 330,000 or 333,000.
333,000. Okay, so great.
You can round to 330. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely a lot of patients here. When I consider this number initially, comparing that to the 50 sales reps that we have, this results in quite a few patients that each of these sales reps would need to be attracting on a yearly basis. That being said, if they're really dealing with hospital chains as a larger unit, maybe that becomes more digestible. But also thinking about the number of cancer patients in the US on a yearly basis, maybe this is a bit attainable, and we could look at this as more of an exciting opportunity in this case.
Okay. All right. Well, we've gone through a good amount of information here, and the client is on her way for a formal recommendation based on where we're at right now. So what would you tell her?
Great. Well, first and foremost, thank you so much. I had a great time getting to the bottom of this here. My recommendation in this case is going to be to pursue the entry into the United States market. Um, Given all the information that we walked through today, we saw a massive market size for the diabetes customers in the United States, some good sales channels for the infant products, as well as some promising figures on the front of um, the cancer goods that we would be selling as well. So I would, really consider these as exciting opportunities that make for, a potential great market entry for our client. Some of the risks that we might have here is like we talked about, depending on the dynamics of the market in the United States, behavior from our competitors could make for some barriers to entry. So that being said, I think it's really important in this case to understand the dynamics of the market, do our diligence on our competitors, and really understand how attainable are these figures that we would need to be hit before really, really jumping into a full-fledged entry into the United States.
Okay, thank you very much. All
No,
right,
thank you.
case done. Okay,
Awesome.
Good job. Awesome. I'm going to get right into the feedback because we have 10 minutes left and I want to make sure we get there. But I want to say overall, great job. Super, you were super engaged and, personable throughout the interview. Like I felt like you were excited to be doing the case, and that's really important. I think that's one broad piece of feedback is you want to make sure you're doing that in all of your interviews. Okay, so intro. I would minor thing. I wouldn't start the case off by saying I don't know much about this problem. I know it's a small thing, but just maybe you could say you're excited about it without saying you don't know much about it. Otherwise, recap, clarifying questions, transition are the things you want to hit, which you did. Some points of feedback on those. For the recap, I think you recapped a little bit too much of the case prompt. Remember, the interviewer has it in front of them. So the structure I always followed when going through a recap was a 3-part sentence, which is always the same thing. You just say, our client today is blah, blah, blah. The problem they're faced with is blah, blah, blah. And our objective today is blah, 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 right? So super, super structured, super crisp. Your clarifying questions were good. I don't have much feedback there. It's always good to ask about the metric. Maybe a timeline is also helpful. Understanding the business model was great. The transition to the framework. So for a McKinsey interview, there's a minor nuance compared to others. The interviewer will have the question waiting for you, right? Most of the time, it's going to be a standard thing like, what are the areas you would consider? What are the factors? Blah, blah, blah. But sometimes it might be a specific question. Like if you're doing a public sector case, it might be like, what are the specific benefits you see there being to this population if the government launched this? So I would transition back by softly saying like, okay, I've answered all my questions. I think I'm ready to get started and start breaking down my thoughts. I'll hand it back to you quickly to get started here. So just something quick to just give them the opportunity to ask you the question they have. Okay. But good job. Okay. So framework. So it took you about 2 minutes to write it out. That's good. It took you about 4.5 minutes to talk through it. I would aim for max 3 minutes to talk through your framework. It was a little bit long. So just get that down a bit, or try to at least. So presentation of the framework and framework itself. So presentation, you were very good about within your buckets numbering your branches. That was great, but I wanted you to do this at the first level of the tree diagram as well, or of the framework. So you did mention there's 4 buckets, but you didn't list them right away. You should start frameworks off by saying like, okay, there's 4 broad buckets here. The US market, customers in both product lines, financials and risks, right? Do that first. Then you can say, okay, now let me deep dive into bucket number 1, the market, right? And then when you go into that second level, now you can say, within this one, I have 3 sub buckets. So you should always be following like a numbered list, almost like you're reading through a table of contents, okay? Once you go through your sub buckets, then you can jump back to the top of the first sub bucket within each broader bucket, and then give your little details in that third level, like your next steps, your questions, which you did a good job of. You had a lot of good ideas there. It's just more about the presentation for you, okay? For the framework itself, a couple quick things. I would try to make the names of the buckets more specific to the case, like rather than saying, and it's easy to do this, like rather than saying like customer, I would just say like, customers of your parents who buy infant food, and like patients of medical products, something like that, right? Just to make it more specific. Otherwise, I think your framework was good. When you have a risks bucket, just be careful that it's really niche and you're not touching on components from other cases. That's my only warning, okay? And then finally, you always want to close out with the next step or an area to look into, which you did by looking into the market. Brownie points, though, if you can ask for specific data, like market size. Okay, do we have like data on like the number of customers and the average spend in each of these segments to calculate that, okay? Okay, so math. Always start off by confirming the data points. That was great, especially when it's a more like beefy one, like there was in Q2. Then after you do that, 3 components to a math question. First is you want to provide your equation in words. Second is you actually walk through the arithmetic. And third is the so what next steps, right? You did step 1 so very well. Like it was very clear what your equation was up front, what your like qualitative journey or process was going to be. Excellent job. Keep doing that. Just again, not going to ding you, but brownie points if you can even like assign numbered trackers to your steps. Like if you say, okay, for the market size, it's going to be a 5-step process or 5 components I want to calculate in order, right? Step 1, this, step 2. And then when you do your arithmetic, which is the second part, you can use those numbered trackers to guide the interviewer as to which part of the formula you're in, right? And then at the end of each step, that's where you can give your checkpoint of like, okay, 13.5 million. How does that sound for this portion? And then they'll validate you as you go. Okay. Couple things. Always make sure you're communicating the units back to me. So it would have prevented you from missing the 365 days in question 1, right? If you had said 40.5 million per day, you would have caught just yourself that you had to multiply for the year. So just make sure you're doing that. And then, I always say for everyone, just keep practicing the math, watch the zeros in that last question, but you were pretty quick. Just, keep practicing the math. Okay. And then finally the so what. So for both math questions, you did a good job by like saying like what it means. I would always take it a step further though in contextualizing the number to another number. So there's always one little final math calculation or little quick thing you can do to contextualize it. In question 1, that would have been saying like 15 billion divided by our $5 billion revenue. It's 3x the size of our company. Like simple math thing, but it gives you a quantitative contextualized like thing, right? In question 2, I would have said, and you hinted at it by bringing up the cancer patient size. I would have just said like, 330 million. We know that 330,000. The population of the US is 300 million. So it's less than 0.1%, right? Like something simple like that. Okay. Next steps, always suggest the next analysis you want to do, not just like, oh, now I want to look at this. Good. But like what specifically about it do you want to look at? For a math question, a great thing to suggest is always like looking into the feasibility side of it. Do we have the right marketing? Do we have the right distribution to actually go achieve this break-even point? And you can suggest like a capabilities assessment or something. Okay. Sorry, I know we have 5 minutes left, so I'm rushing through. Brainstorming.
No worries.
I think you did well. This was good. That you nailed it. Like you want to hit the buckets up front, break it down into different categories, and then provide 2 or 3 distinct bullets or recommendations within each one. I would try to go for 3 buckets. Consultants love the number 3. And you had a lot of good ideas where I felt like you could have broken it out. Like distribution and marketing, for example, are distinct in their own rights, right? Like distribution is more about pushing products out. Marketing is more about the promotions, like you can go more digital, right? Like, so just try to bucket it out into 3. For the what else question, they might ask you that up to 3 times. Just make sure you don't seem flustered. And maybe, as a tip, I always kind of save like 1 or 2 ideas on the side of my paper, just so that you're ready when they come back with it. It helps, right? Okay, exhibit. So, 3-step process to going through an exhibit question as well. First is you want to read through what you're seeing. Second is you want to give the insights in a numbered, structured fashion. Third, next steps, right? So next steps is how you want to close off every question. But reading through the exhibit, I think you did very well. Like you said, okay, there's these 3 retail channel options. And then we're looking at these 3 different rows, which was great, right? For the insights, you hit a lot of the right ideas, but work more on the structured communication of it. So starting off by saying, okay, that's the exhibit. I'm noticing 3 things here, or I'm noticing like 4 things, right? and then just walk through them in a numbered fashion. So number one, first thing I'm seeing is the difference in the store size, the number of stores, right? It's a lot smaller for the first two, whatever. I don't have to read through the insights because you got them right, but just make sure you hit 1, 2, 3 in a structured way. And then next steps, again, always think about the next analysis to do, right? You did hit next steps, but just get that extra level of detail in. And for an exhibit, there's usually try to connect it to a formula or to like some math thing you can calculate. Like let's look at like revenue per store, or let's look at like something you might be able to calculate off the exhibit, just to really show them that you're so hypothesis driven and thinking about the next thing you need to really solve the problem. Okay. Closing. So again, 3 steps you got: answer, risk, next step. So for your answer though, I liked you had a very good and well supported answer, but just try to be, again, more, the theme here is just more structured, like structured in the way you present your reason. So it's answer, 3 reasons why, right? So like, I think we should enter the US market, particularly by chasing the mass retailers channel for infant products and the diabetic segment for the medical nutrition products. And here's why. And then 3 distinct reasons, and number them. Okay. Risk was good on barriers to entry. Next step, that was good. Just you did this, but just make sure the next steps are always matching 1-to-1 to your risk. But so again, broader themes there. Numbered, structured communication. Get those math reps in, and then for the exhibit, just make sure your insights are more structured out. But again, great job, and kudos to you for doing a good job in front of everybody here.
Thank you. No, I really appreciate it. I've got all the feedback here written down, and this was super, super informative. So
awesome.
Thank you.
All right. I guess, Japheth, we don't have a lot of time for Q&A now, eh?
We don't. But hey,
Yeah.
thank you so much, both of you. This was a fascinating case to sit in on. So round of applause. Kellen, thanks for being on the hot seat. Great
sure.
job. You guys, some kind comments coming in the chat. Love it. Love it.
Awesome.
Okay, y'all. Well, hey, thank you for joining us here on your Tuesday afternoon or evening. We really appreciate you. We've got more of these coming up next month and beyond. So we'd love for you to join that. Please find us, reach out via email if you got any questions. We'd love to answer your questions and work with you on case prep. We've got tons of resources, and so we'll send out some more resources and helpful links when we send out the recording of this call later this week. And in the meantime, please do stay in touch. Mark, great job, and thanks everybody. We'll see you soon.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Have a good night.